Cool Hits 105.7 now presents Let's Talk Sports, a complete look at sports scores and stories. We'll also talk with coaches, players, sports broadcasters and writers, and others making sports news. Let's Talk Sports is brought to you by Fannon's Boyd County Ford, Clark's Pump and Shops of the Tri-State, Bowman's Auto Service Center, KDMC Sports Medicine, River Cities Builders, Commercial Bank of Grayson, Kentucky Ohio Automotive Centers, and by Monroe Collision Center.
Thank you.
And good morning. Welcome into another edition of Let's Talk Sports on a cloudy and cool Saturday morning in downtown Ashland, Kentucky. James Collier here with you until 10 a.m. this morning with two very special guests in studio from the Cincinnati Reds, the voice of the Cincinnati Reds, Marty Brennaman, and his lovely wife, Amanda. First, good morning to both of you.
Good morning, James.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was funny when I talked with Amanda earlier in the week, and I said, "Are you in town?" And she said, "Actually, we both are." I said, "Can we both come in?" I said, "I don't know if the studio's big enough for the Brennamans to come in and have the brawl here, but we're certainly glad that both of you can join us this morning. We've got a great show set up. We'll talk with Marty and Amanda throughout the morning, and then at 9:30. Also from the Cincinnati Reds, pitcher Dan Straley will stop by, and we'll catch up with him, see how the first season with the Redlegs went for him. And then at 9:45, we'll take a look at the Major League Baseball playoff picture. A couple of series already in jeopardy of being closed out in 3 straight. We'll get you up to date with those, including a big win last night for the Chicago Cubs on a one-run home, a solo home run, in the later part of that ball game, as the Cubs get an early 1-0 lead over the Giants. And then also some big games coming up tomorrow in the NFL. But in studio this morning, Marty Brennaman and Amanda Brennaman. Now, if you're out and about and would like to meet Mr. Brennaman, our studios are at 1524 Winchester Avenue. Stop by. He said he'd be more than happy to say hello after we finish up with the interview. But, Marty, it's hard to believe. It seems like it was just yesterday. It was spring training and opening day, and now here we are. We're in Major League Baseball playoffs and looking at the off season for the Redlegs.
Yeah, it's amazing, James. I've often said, and Amanda's heard me say it a million times, I'm always glad to see it start, and I'm always glad to see it end. But when it starts, it takes a while. You get into a certain routine in the off season, just as you get into a routine during the season, and getting out of the routine of going to the ballpark every day is easy. Getting back into the routine of going, and it takes a couple of weeks once the regular season begins. But once that transitory period ends, the season sails by. And it doesn't make any difference whether you have a great year or you have a bad year like our club had this year. Once the thing gets rolling, and it's basically an everyday process, it's unbelievable. You wake up one day and it's September the 10th and you wonder where in the heck the season's gone.
And it's one of those things, like you said, you get so accustomed to the day in and day out. It's almost like Groundhog Day. You get up, you go to the park, you do the game, you come home, you prepare, you get up the next morning, you do it all over again. Yeah,
it's a certain routine that you fall into. And guys in my business, everybody seems to have a different routine. I know Amanda seems to be baffled continuously why I like to go to the ballpark early. And I'm normally down to the ballpark at the latest by 2:30 every afternoon for a 7:10 game. That's just my routine. I like being at the ballpark. I like being in the radio booth when nobody else is there but me. It's kind of like a quiet time for me before our engineer Dave Armbruster shows up, and then Brantley shows up, or Kelch, or whoever I'm working with. And then you're off and running. And we got to meet Brian Price at 3:40 and do the pregame radio show. And so I like to go down there early. I like to get the lineups in my scorebook early. I like to do a lot of prep work at the ballpark when nobody else is there. And it makes for, it makes for almost a day like anybody who goes to work. It's a 7 or 8 hour day for me, given the amount of time I spend down there. But thank God I still enjoy going down there. I'm at the point now where my better days are behind me. And so you think about when the time comes, it'll all end. And the one thing I still enjoy doing is going to the ballpark. I still enjoy broadcasting the games. I don't know that I like the players as much now as I did back in the 70s and 80s, quite honestly. Certain exceptions, one of whom is who you're having on at 9:30 this morning, because he's really a neat guy and he's a great story. But, it's like everything else. You have a routine. You have one. Everybody has a routine that has a job, and that essentially that's what mine's all about.
Well, and in this business, as you said, it's one of those things you get in that routine, and as you said, you like to get there early. You kind of like that solitude that you get to take everything in, get your mind where you want it for that game, because when that first pitch flies at 7:10, it's mayhem for the rest of the evening until you get to the final call.
Yeah, every game takes on a life of its own. If it's a 1-0 game, it's because of the pitching. If it's a 12-10 game, it's because of the offense. And if it's 12-10, it's going to be a long game. If it's a 1-0 game like the Cubs had over the Giants last night, it's going to be essentially a quick game. And that game was the quickest of all the first postseason games that have been played this season, simply because of the fact that it was 3 up and 3 down, and rarely where there's a scoring threat and the pitchers dominated the game. But every game takes on a life of its own, and as I say, I enjoy doing it. I know Joe Nuxall used to say, if you hang around this game long enough, you're going to see something you've never seen before, and he has been right. I mean, every now and then we'll see something that causes us to scratch our heads and wonder what in the heck happened and how did that occur, and we've never seen it happen before, and we may never see it happen again. It's a great game, and I think the greatest time of the year for this game is what's happening right now. We've already seen tremendous baseball. We've seen great pitching. We've seen incredible hitting. We've had 2 games in which a team has hit 3 home runs in one inning. One game in which the team hit back-to-back home runs, and you don't see that very often. And so this is a great time for baseball. This is when the spotlight is on the game, despite college football and professional football and the coming of the NBA and the NHL. This is really a time that baseball can shine, and so far it has.
We'll get back to the playoffs in just a little bit. You bring up a man that I grew up listening to, you and Mr. Nuxall. Tell me about the time that you got to spend with him in the booth and the relationships that you two bonded with throughout your broadcasting career.
We don't have enough time. We were together for 31 years, and it's interesting that the 31 years that he and I spent together equal the 31 years that Jerry Doggett, which most people have never heard of, and Vin Scully spent together. They were the team that ushered in Dodgers baseball when it came to Los Angeles, and they were together for 31 years before Jerry retired. And so Joe and I are in pretty good company. We were incredibly close to the extent that I could stop a sentence in the middle of it and he could finish it. We used to get mail, this is one of the greatest compliments that anybody's ever paid us as a team. And it would be addressed to Marty and Joe, Cincinnati, Ohio. No address, nothing. Just Marty and Joe, Cincinnati, Ohio, and the main post office in downtown Cincinnati knew exactly where to deliver the mail. They'd send it to Riverfront Stadium or to Great American Ballpark, and that's unbelievable. I mean, I think federal law would dictate that they send it back from whence it came or throw it away, but they knew where the mail was supposed to go. The first time I ever got a piece and it said Marty and Joe, I thought, you know what? As a team, we've arrived. We had a great time together. We were both left-handers, which I think spoke volumes about the kind of relationship we had. He welcomed me into the family when I came in 1974 after working with Al Michaels for 3 years, and he and Al were very close, and he did all the good things with me that he did with Al in bringing him into the job and making sure that you were comfortable in a new position. And from that point on, it was just a relationship that grew and really solidified itself when I took up the game of golf back in the mid-'90s. And we do a ball game on the road at night and come back and go to bed and get up at 6 o'clock and go play golf and come back so Joe could take a power nap before he had to go to the ballpark. We had a wonderful time. I cannot imagine anybody working with an individual side by side for that long that thoroughly enjoyed and looked forward to going to the ballpark every day because of the person that they work with.
Well, and you've been fortunate enough. You've been in the business for as many years, 40-plus years that you've been doing this. You've seen some of the greats, and you and I, we spoke a few weeks back, and you said he's not one of the greats. He is the great. We said goodbye to Vin Scully this year. What do we lose from the game with Vin being gone now?
Well, you lost the greatest baseball broadcaster in the history of the business. will be the greatest baseball broadcaster in the history of the business if they're still playing this game 1,000 years from now. I refer to Vin more as a storyteller than as a play-by-play announcer because he had the greatest recall of anybody I've ever been around. He could see something that occurred in a Dodgers game tonight that he could reflect back upon to a July evening at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn back in 1955. But on top of all that, and I've said it a million times because this was the year that he was going to walk away from the game, he is as great an individual as he was a broadcaster. He just a super person, a guy totally without ego, constantly being reminded at every turn that he was the greatest baseball broadcaster who ever lived. And it genuinely made him very, very uncomfortable, just like all of this hoopla over him walking away made him very... I saw the quote he made the other day. He said, words can't describe how appreciative I am, and words can't describe how uncomfortable it has all made me. And I really believe that. Knowing him as I do, I was with him for about 35 minutes when the club was in L.A. back in May, and just he and I. And I said, why are you going to retire? And he said, why not? He said, it's been 67 years. I said, yeah, but you still sound good. You're still on top of the game. He said, 67 years is enough. I said, aren't you scared that you're going to retire? He said, I'm scared to death. He said, because it's the unknown. It's something I've never experienced before. He said, the same thing is going to happen to you in the not-too-distant future. And I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to hang out with my friends. I'm going to hit golf balls. I'm going to spend time with my wife and my children and my grandchildren. He said, I'll be fine. But the game will never be the same again without him. He is such an eloquent person on the air. The goodbye that he extended to his listeners last Sunday from AT&T Park in San Francisco when he recited a poem was eloquent. I mean, there's none of us that can do. I'm a bull in a china shop, and Vinny is a ballet dancer. That's the best way I can describe the two of us. Nobody will ever be as eloquent as he is and has been, and it'll really be a tremendous void when we go to L.A. next summer, whenever that might be, and he won't be around.
I always said, and this was just a true compliment to Mr. Scully, I said if I could pick one person to read my obituary at my funeral, it would be that man, because not only would he bring the meaning behind it, but I mean it would be, as you said, as best as it could possibly be from any possible voice that could do it. So the game is certainly going to miss him. Amanda, you kind of have been baptized by fire into this business rather quickly, and but you've had an opportunity to really settle in, and as Marty's talked about, he has a routine. How much have you had to get into a routine of especially when you go on the road with him?
Well, you know what's good about me being on the road with him is I have been to all these cities before. I've traveled extensively with previous jobs, so I frankly knew more about these cities than he did, and the routine is dragging him out of the hotel room and doing something other than playing golf, which I have no problem with. I think it's great that he plays golf, and I also don't have a problem with his routine. I think it's wonderful that he still enjoys going to the ballpark and getting there early and, you know, being all into it, I guess, which is absolutely great because I think it reflects in his broadcast every night. But our routine is to get out and do things, and then when he goes to the ballpark, because he does go later when they're on the road, they have a team shuttle that leaves about 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game, which is really, really late. I mean, so you know, I get ready to go to the ballpark. Basically, I go to most games. If I don't go to the games, there's always something to do because I'm. It's not like I'm in Toledo. I mean, I'm in great cities across this country, so I'll go to Broadway shows by myself. I have friends all over this country. I'll go to dinner. We'll go to the game. It's a pretty good routine I have as well. And at home, you know, I'm at home, so there's no problem with that at all. And of course, I grew up listening to Marty as well, just like most of the people in this room did. And you know, it gives me great pleasure to still listen to the game. Now it's, you know, now I'll text him during the game like, no, you said that wrong, or no, that's not his name. You're not saying this properly. I do. I'm his worst critic.
Instant
I'm afraid.
Critique right in the middle of the game.
She'll text me. She says, "You absolutely do not know what you're talking about." It's amazing.
All true.
Yeah.
and then of course he corrects himself and gives me the credit. So.
I do give you the credit.
You do. I appreciate it very much.
So now let me ask you this: when he's at home and they're on the homestands, when he comes home, do you give him a critique when he walks in the door? Are you waiting for him to
No, not typically. I do like to talk about the game typically, but it's not always right then because he's talked for three plus hours. So that usually happens the next day, and he typically brings it up. I mean, Marty's well-rounded. We don't just talk about baseball, obviously, but we do chat about the game. I do write my article for the Ashland Beacon, and it's good to get some insights that, frankly, not many other, I don't want to say reporters because that's putting a title on me that I'm most assuredly not, but that most folks don't get the access to. So we will chat about the game or, a decision that Brian made or a player or whatever. So
let me make a point here, James. I've never, and I don't say this because she's my wife, but I don't know a woman who knows the game any more than she does.
I can't disagree with you there.
The technical aspects of it, she understands the game. That's why it's easy to talk to her about a move that Brian made or did not make last night, or something that occurred in the game that might have turned the game, a decision in the heat of battle, and she's good at that stuff. And so it's easy for me to talk to her because she understands the game, and it's certainly one of many topics of conversation that we have.
Up against our first break, Marty and Amanda in studio. Stop by and say hello. 1524 Winchester Avenue. We'll be back right after this. You're inside Let's Talk Sports here on the Collier Sports Network. Welcome back to Let's Talk Sports. As we're a little behind schedule, but not a problem with that. We'll catch up with it later on. But 9:22 here on a cloudy and cool Saturday morning. Welcome to fall. If you enjoy fall weather, throw a pot of chili on and enjoy the festivities. It is absolutely wonderful outside this morning.
I think we're going to the Pumpkin Festival. Have y'all ever been? Milton?
Which one are you going to? The one in Milton?
The one in Milton.
Okay. Yeah, my wife, we were talking about this coming back from Pittsburgh last weekend, and one of our friends was telling us, you need to go to the Pumpkin Festival. We've never gone.
I haven't either. And Marty's never been to the Milton Flea Market. We may make a pass through there, too.
Marty, you're in for a treat now.
I told him he could probably buy a monkey, and, I mean, who knows what you can buy there.
Yeah, I mean, you may come out of there with $5 and an experience for a lifetime. Joining me in studio, the voice of the Cincinnati Reds, Marty Brennaman, his lovely wife, Amanda, and a cast of thousands from the Cool Hit Sports Network talking about baseball and just the season that was. Marty, it was definitely a tale of two seasons for the Reds. Before the All-Star game and then post-All-Star break. I was talking with Dan Straley earlier this week, and he said he believes one or two games around the 500 mark in the second half of the season, and it was really a different team. You had pitching, you had healthy bodies that were there, and those two come together, and it really made for a much more enjoyable season for the Red fans.
Well, I think the biggest single difference, James, two things. One, Joey Votto was unconscious from the All-Star break to the end of the season, hitting over 400. He floundered badly in April and May and part of June, which is one of the strangest things in the world because he's truly one of the great hitters in the game, and he's truly one of the great hitters in the history of the game. And then they got Michael Lorenzen and they got Raisel Iglesias back off the disabled list, which they'd been on since spring training, which kind of gave them a solidifying of the bullpen. They moved people out of roles that they were uncomfortable with, moved them up in the game or back in the game to the fifth, sixth innings, things of that nature, and then the bullpen settled down. I thought the baseball operation for this club did an absolutely horrible job of putting together the bullpen that they put together when the season started. In fact, had they had a good bullpen from day one, I think it would have made the difference in a minimum of 10 wins. I think they would have had a minimum of 10 more wins and 10 less losses. So Iglesias and Lorenzen became very important. And I think there's reason to be very optimistic about the future of this club. They have made some trades that are helping them now and will help them in the future. The two best stories of the entire season, I think, number one was Dan Straley, who the Reds picked up for nothing in spring training and originally was scheduled to be a relief pitcher and made 2 appearances out of the bullpen, and then he moved into the rotation, and the rest, as they say, is history. He just got better and better and better all year long. It was amazing the year that he had, winning 14 games for a club that lost 94.
And he finally got a hit.
And he finally
How
got
big
a
was
hit.
that?
First
That was
Major
so
League.
happy for him.
I used to tell him before
know you
every
did.
start, I'm pulling like the Dickens for you to continue hitless. I mean, you know, and he bounced one into right field one day, and it was front page news, or it should have been. I think this club's got a chance to be better. Not a chance. They will be better next year if they keep their people healthy. And I think certainly by 2018, it will be an impact player in this division. There are people who think they could do it next year, and I hope they can. I hope I'm wrong. But they'd have to catch lightning in a bottle in a lot of areas. Most notably, the bullpen's got to be better, and I think it will be from day one. I think those people who are paid handsomely to put clubs together didn't do a very good job, and I think they realize what they've got to do, improve the bullpen and improve the bench. The bench was terrible. Nice guys, but there wasn't a player on that bench that could come off the bench in the eighth inning and hit a home run to break a game up. We had no power coming off the bench. The starting pitching is going to be good, I think. I like the position players. It's got a chance to be – the future, I think, is very bright for this club if they continue down the path they're on right now.
One of the biggest notables that is still there, Brandon Phillips, and it looms around. Is he going to stay? Is he going to be dealt? There was a deal in place last year to move him to Washington. He blocked the trade. Do we see Brandon Phillips back with this club next year? Well,
I can, God bless him. He had a great year. He hit over 290, and he's lost a step or so because of age. He still has the ability to make the great play. He's still the best defensive second baseman I've ever seen. But there's a time for everybody. They not only had him traded to Washington, they also had him traded to Arizona, and he said no to both trades, and he has that right. He's a 10-5 player, 10 years in the big leagues, last five with the same team, and he vetoed both of those trades. Not so much that he didn't want to go play there; he wanted more money and he wanted a contract extension, which neither club was willing to do. The kid that's waiting in the wings is a kid named Dilson Herrera, who they got from the Mets in the Jay Bruce trade. He is the next second baseman on this club. It would not be out of the realm of possibility that they could talk to Brandon this winter, and tell him, if we can strike a deal for you, we're going to, with your permission. If we can't, you have to understand that there may come a time next season, as early as opening day, when we decide that you are no longer the everyday second baseman on this club and that this kid's got to play. If that's the case, and next year is his option year, if you're sitting on the bench all year, your value will go right south as far as it can go. So Brandon Phillips will have some big decisions to make if the Reds approach him in that manner. He's been a great player for this club. There's no question about that. As I said, the best defensive second baseman in the history of a franchise that has had great second basemen. Joe Morgan and Pokey Reese and Brett Boone, and the list goes on and on. Johnny Temple. But he's the best. But there is a time when you have to sit down and take stock of your situation and try and figure out what's best for you if you want to continue to play. And what's not best for him is to be sitting on the bench for most of the time next year.
When I've talked with a lot of people over the last couple of weeks after this came out, but many were shocked that Brian Price was retained as the manager of this club. But when you go back and you look at the job that he did, as you said, with a piecemealed ball club, it's not fathomable to think that you give this man some players and they're a flip-flop club. Immediately, they're probably hanging around second, third place in the Central.
Well, the good thing, I wholeheartedly agree with bringing him back. I had people text me and say, "What the heck are they doing? Are they out of their minds?" And I did not disagree. In fact, I promoted bringing him back. I don't agree a lot with what Walt Jocketty does as president of this operation, and he doesn't agree with a whole lot of things I say. But the one thing I did agree 2 months ago, he made the comment when the subject of Brian Price came up, we're not going to judge Brian Price on wins and losses. And that's the right way to do it when you've got a manager who manages a bad team. He can't magically produce wins with talent that's not capable of doing it consistently. And I applaud them for bringing him back next year, and also for possibly retaining him in 2018. The club will have a club option on doing that, and maybe he will reap the benefits of being around another year that will show enough improvement that they will maybe even extend it beyond 2018. he's a great guy to work with. He and I've gotten very close to a lot of managers, and he's one of them. We talk about things off the air that could never be discussed publicly, and he trusts me implicitly with information that he could get fired if I ever leaked. And I love the relationship. I like the guy. I think he's very bright, and I hope he has nothing but success next year and beyond next year.
We enter, what is it, year 43, correct? Coming up with the Cincinnati Reds.
No, 43
44.
gone.
44. My mistake, 44. Yeah. Have you thought, when does the end start to approach? When
is that, Amanda?
As I told him, he should not work one day longer than he wants to, and he should not quit one day sooner than he wants to. So that's entirely up to you. But there's lots of things we haven't done and seen, and sometimes baseball can get in the way.
I'm like Scully. It scares me to think about retiring. I'm back next year. The deal is done. The club will make an announcement. I don't know, sometime maybe next week or week after. But everybody
the breaking news here
anyway. There's no big news. I mean, everybody figured I'd be back, and I'm going on a year-to-year basis now. I know Vinny did it for 20 years, and I feel the same way. I'll renew a contract every year, or I'll decide next August or September
to take me to Italy.
I'm not coming back, and Amanda and I are going to relocate to Italy, and she'll fly home every other weekend to Ashland to see her mom and dad's sister.
Yes, I can't be too far from here.
Hey, that's fine as long as she's bringing back wonderful food.
That's right. Well, she's
you all have
a
wonderful
connoisseur
food here
of good
too.
Food. That's basically it. I'm year to year now, and as I say, I still enjoy it. I get very mentally tired during the year, and I think that's about a byproduct of old age more than anything else. But I'm in pretty good shape, and I'm married to a good woman, and being 30 years younger than I am, she keeps me on my toes. And amazingly, on top of all that, we have the same birthday, which
that
is absolutely
unbelievable
incredible.
when I found that out. I said, how does that work? 30 years apart, same birthday, and both share a baseball mind. That's pretty awesome.
That's not bad.
That's
pretty great.
bad.
It's very good.
Before I let you go, Marty, I got to take you back one time. September 11th, 1985 to be exact. And this was, I can remember as a youngster, I was sitting in my house watching the television, Eric Shaw working against Pete Rose, and what may be one of the most memorable calls of all of baseball. Take me through that night.
Well, the thing about Pete breaking the record was the inevitability of it. I mean, we knew the record was going to be broken. There are records that are broken that nobody ever suspects is going to happen. But, we kept a running count, as everybody else did, of how many hits he was away from tying Cobb's record and breaking Cobb's record. And the great story about that was that they finished a series in Chicago against the Cubs on a Sunday afternoon, and Pete was one hit away from tying the record. And he got a base hit early in the game to tie Cobb's record, and I had the call. That's the only time Joe and I were probably ever selfish, because he wanted the record-breaking call and I wanted the record-breaking call, and we made no bones about it. And he came up in the seventh inning and hit a rocket deep into the hole at shortstop. I mean, hit the heck out of it. And they had a shortstop, Sean Dunston, who had one of the great arms of all time. And Dunston went in the hole, backhanded the ball, made the throw, a lesser throw, and Pete would have beaten it for the record-breaking hit. And Pete was out by a half a step at first. And so now they go home, and they play San Diego on a Monday night, and there's 38,000 people in the ballpark, and he goes 0 for 4. And then the next night, of course, he came up against Shao, his first time up, and had the base hit. You never. There are guys that try to that plan what they want to say about or something that they know is coming. And I was never that good. If I tried to make it to say something cute, and in my opinion, memorable for the fans to hear millions of times down the road, it would sound like it was contrived coming out of my mouth. So I just try to relate what I'm seeing and convey it to people listening and what's going on in the aftermath. And I think it came out pretty good. I was not disappointed with it at all. The funny thing is that Joe was forever embarrassed every time he heard the call.
But it's so Joe.
Because it overrode for about 4 or 5 seconds what I was saying. And it just embarrassed him to death. He apologized. I said, "Don't apologize to me. I don't care. It doesn't make any difference to me." In fact, like Amanda said, it was the essence of what Joe was all about. And so I think it simply adds to it. I think the fact that his voice is involved in the actual call, in the eyes and the minds of Reds fans, made it all that much more endearing. And it was an exciting night. And the other part of it is that the two best friends I have in the game over all the years I've been around are Pete and Joe Morgan. They're the two guys that I grew up with, even though they were already there. And we became very close when we were all together back in the 70s before Pete left to go to the Phillies, and then Joe was traded away to the Giants. So they're both very, very close and dear friends of mine. And they're two guys I had an awful lot of fun with over the years, and I still pray that one day Pete will get into the Hall of Fame. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'd love to see it happen before I pass on.
One of the greatest events that you can do at the Reds Hall of Fame up in Cincinnati, they have a booth set up to where you can go in and you can make the call. And one of the options that you can do is the record-breaking hit. And the first time I got a chance to go up and do it, I'm not going to lie, I left with chills. It was a pretty neat thing of getting to do that.
Yeah, what's funny is a lot of people go up there and do it, and I have people come up to me and say, "You got the easiest job in the world." I said, "Really?" They said, "What you do for a living? You go up and all you do is talk baseball for 2.5 or 3 hours." I've told high school coaches, they're the guys that really think it's an easy job. I'd like for you to come up there, and I will turn the mic over to you for 3 outs, for a half an inning, and I want to see how it works. But what they don't think about is once that strike or that ball is called, there's nothing that happens again until 25 or 30 seconds later when the pitcher throws the next pitch. You can't have 25 seconds of dead air.
That doesn't make good radio.
Something intelligent, although some people would accuse what I say of being not so intelligent sometimes. It's a little bit tougher than it would appear to a lot of people.
Marty Brennaman and Amanda Brennaman joining me here in studio. If you're out and about, 1524 Winchester Avenue, stop by and say hello. Guys, enjoy your weekend in town and stuff, and thank you so much for joining us in studio. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having us. It's always fun to come back home.
Thanks, James. A pleasure. We look forward to doing it again.